Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Biggleswade Town Council meeting this evening. This is a formal reminder to meeting attendees that this is a formal meeting. Can I advise that members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak during the public open session, but not at other times. The meeting is being filmed, and by being present, attendees are deemed to have agreed to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings. I can advise that attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection rights of that individual. And as always, can I ask members to mute their microphones when not speaking? First item on the agenda, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Agnew, Councillor Barrett, Councillor Knight, Councillor North and Councillor Skilton, and of course the Chairman, Councillor Woodhead. They're the apologies. Second item on the agenda are declarations of interest. So any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in any agenda item, please? No. Okay, so we'll move on straight on then to item 3, Town Mayor's announcements. Nothing there. Public open session. I have Councillor Fage wishing to speak.
Hello. Item 9A, which is the local plan call for sites. So firstly, a couple of weeks ago at the extraordinary town council meeting, I thought we saw our councils working together, probably the best I've seen in my 9 years as a councillor, with central beds represented. Good. Well, whilst the numbers weren't huge because it's the summer, those who were there were very, very switched on to the debate that we needed to have about the 30-something sites we went through. Might even have been a little bit more than that. You have in front of you a document which a version of which I emailed on Sunday, about Sunday lunchtime, to all councillors. This is ever such a slight variation of that. It's really important that we collectively speak with one voice if we can. For those of you who haven't read the document, to give a little bit of history, in 2018, the Town Council took a position to reluctantly but firmly support development to the east of Biggleswade, subject to good design and sufficient infrastructure. Obviously, the local plan that was made didn't capture those initial wishes. There was support for development to the north and restricted development to the east, which I think has limited our ability to champion the infrastructure causes we needed. This new local plan stretches to 2050. So the thought that we collectively have to have is, what is the town going to look like in a quarter of a century's time? None of these sites are easy to talk about, and Biggleswade is already short infrastructure, but the paper that you have in front of you considers just over 30 sites, including some of those in neighbouring parishes such as Salville and Sutton, and it objects to almost all of them, with the exception of 4. There's no such thing as development that is unconditional, but the cases made out in this document explain the conditions under which we might accept this development, which is, again, good design, sufficient infrastructure, particularly around those garden village principles to the east of Biggleswade, but with a couple of new, very important conditions. One is exploring a new access to the A1. I think what we know now that we didn't know back in 2018 is that there are junctions which are just at capacity in Biggleswade and cannot be expanded. So that needs to feature in the response. The other one is, I am becoming more and more concerned about how close we are getting to our villages and the development envelopes getting closer to one another. So there is a new condition in there around supporting important countryside gaps. So I look forward to hearing the debate. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I don't know whether this paper will have support. That is a decision entirely for the Town Council, but if it does, I will happily add my voice to it. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fage. So we'll I guess we've no one else online, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. So we've got no invited speakers. So members' questions, please. Any members with questions? Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I would like to know if the council's got anything going on in the Franklin's Park on Monday, because I think we finally got this chap to put a mural in, and it's an extra one, or as copy of the one that's on near the train station, and we were lucky to get it for nothing, and it's been installed for nothing. So it's a freebie.
So it's a question, but it's the fact that it's actually happening.
Is there anything to stop it?
It's a question, but it's a statement to say that this is being
Yes.
implemented on Monday, correct?
Yeah.
So firstly, were members aware of it? But if members weren't aware of it, it's an update from Councillor Thomas that there is a mural being installed at Franklin's at, what time was that, did you say?
Probably starting around 8 o'clock.
Actually, you're building it, put it up around 8 o'clock on Monday. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Hi. Okay, so this is a question and sort of like a request as well. So a few points. So firstly, Saxon Pool. Yeah, it's a question actually. I very much welcome CBC's recently approved investment plans. Being a user myself, I have done some research as well and collated some feedback from social media and users and workers of the Saxon Pool as well. I appreciate this is a CBC facility and not BTC, and that we're not in a position to act on the feedback that I've obtained. But what I would like to do is collate the feedback properly and send a detailed summary to the council. And could this then perhaps be forwarded to the relevant people at the CBC perhaps? And maybe, I think it's already been on the joint committee, but I'm not sure if it could be put back on there about the specific improvements or what the actual residents are suggesting. So is that something that the town council maybe can feedback or?
I've got a view, but I think what I should do is defer to the clerk to get the clerk's view first, and then I'll express a view as a member of the council as opposed to the chairman.
I think we could collate the feedback and send it, but I think we'd have to be very clear that it isn't town council feedback and it's not an agreement that's come through the process of a committee or a council, but we could do it by way of information and helping get residents' views across.
Okay, that would be helpful. Yeah, thank you. Chair.
My view would be that yes, we could. My view would be that perhaps it wouldn't necessarily something that we should do, but I accept the fact that it's something that is not something that we couldn't do. So on that basis, that's a pretty woolly response. I think what you could say, Councillor Patel, is that officers are happy to receive the feedback and forward it off.
Okay, thank you. Me again. Right, so secondly, Universal Studios. So it's a major visitor attraction coming near to Biggleswade. We've got town centre, businesses and the Green Wheel, Jordan's Mill, Shuttleworth nearby. So this could be an opportunity around tourism, signage, transport promotion and encouraging visitors to spend time and money in Biggleswade. So I was looking to suggest that maybe this could be, I don't know if this is the right place to raise it, but referred to the TCM committee so that we can look into it in more detail to promote Biggleswade and see what's happening before it actually gets built.
Okay, I'm going to answer that one. Councillor Patel, I think you're absolutely right. It's a great opportunity for the town council in the area, but you're absolutely right as well, though, that it's a TCM matter to consider. And as chairman of TCM, it's something you can put on the agenda as long as we're clear on what the content and what we're looking to achieve from that output. So I suggest to work with the community development manager and the head of governance and work out what we want to achieve from that. I'm sure we can come up with something that would be useful going forward.
Thank you, Chair. Cheers.
Okay. Any other members' questions? No. Okay. In which case we'll move on to the next item, which is the minutes and recommendations of meetings. So the first meeting, we've got the 14th of July. So first we're on page 8. Firstly, for accuracy, page 8, then page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, and page 17. So no comments. So am I right in saying we're happy to the minutes as they are? I'll get those signed at some point. Thank you very much. The next minutes are from the meeting of the 28th of July. Now, obviously, as we've spoken about, this is the extraordinary meeting that related to the single item, more or less relating to the call for sites. You'll have seen that it's a very comprehensive set of minutes detailing the conversations that were had. And also, as part of that, we've also got the basically the detail. My proposal here would be that we, unless anyone really wants to go through these in detail, and unless there's any real major inaccuracies, I would say that we accept these minutes as they are on the basis that we have an item on the agenda that will be dealing with the comments on this agenda. So I think my view would be we don't need to go through them in detail unless there's any major inaccuracies. Councillor Strawn.
I agree with that approach, but may I just make an observation?
Yep.
At the very beginning, we referred to the chairman's suspended standing orders when, in fact, it would have been, we should be consistent with mayor throughout, I believe. But also, I think it's technically council agreed to suspend standing orders. But apart from that, I'm quite happy with the approach.
Okay, so happy to take that amendment, Councillor Jones.
Just a big thank you, because I wasn't able to make this one as I was on holiday, and if it hadn't been for the notes, it was obviously helpful to watch the video back, but to read this first, put it in context, and they are detailed notes. So thank you for the notes to the officers. Well,
I think the point is that in that meeting as well, Councillor Jones, is that we went through everything in detail. It was a long meeting, but we discussed everything in a sort of really positive way. And it was, as Councillor Page alluded to there, it was a collaborative approach as well. So it wasn't just town council members. Ward councillors actually actively contributed very, very positively. And we've got something, when we go through the call for site paper in due course, and we've got something that I think is a really, really good piece of work. We'll see what members think, of course. But yeah, I think you're right. Having the minutes in the format they were, without having to read to watch the 2.5 hours worth of YouTube, I think it was really, really positive. So again, thank you to our community clerk for taking care of that. So if you're happy, we'll note the minutes as they are. So I'm going to move back on to matters arising in relation to item 8A, which is the 14th of July. Any matters arising firstly on page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11. Oh, Councillor Strawn.
Yes, I notice under 4A on page 10, I think we have had a response from CBC who seem to be denying that there is an issue here. How do they come to that conclusion?
Would the clerk I'm going to offer that up to the clerk to respond, or otherwise, for that matter.
I have had a response, and looking at what they're saying is they've reviewed footage from around the last month, and they can't see that the signage, well, they see that the signage is correct at present at the no entry end of the one-way system. But they do believe that the signs are missing for the weight limit restriction, so they are going to look into that. But they have they've raised that on Fix My Street. There is a reference number 17109, and they have asked that any maintenance issues be raised through Fix My Street directly. And that was their response in terms of the bulk.
Thank you for that information. I think it's important that we recognise that we have dealt with it as best we can in the circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. And thank you to the clerk as well. I think the bit about the enforcement camera, it seems as though there's something in place for cameras anyway, judging by the fact that they're looking at cameras, but I wasn't aware they were there, but that's good to know. Okay, next, anything else on page 10? Page 11, Councillor Strawn.
Yes, under item 6, members' questions with regard to the monitoring of traffic speed, etc., in particular in Home Court Avenue. I understand that the community safety group isn't able to do that at present. we were holding the appropriate piece of equipment to carrying out speed watch. Does the town council still have that in its possession in safe custody? Because it may be something that could be looked at and being implemented in the future, and hopefully the community safety group may be able to take that role on with speed watch in due course.
Mr. Hussaini?
Thank you. So we have that equipment. I think it should also be noted that in the past we have tried to assist the community safety group with increasing its volunteering base as well, to specifically for Speedwatch. One of the issues which has stopped it essentially is the need for police checks, including on volunteers, which that's what the community safety group have told us. But yes, going forward, absolutely, we can see what we can do on that.
Go ahead.
Perhaps our representative from the council on the community safety group could take that on board with the next meeting.
Councillor Strawn? The clerk has an update as well.
I have an update from CBC Highway. So they've said that they checked the recent speed data for the location and that they will be reaching out to their travel and active transport team. They're going to be asking them to consider the road for a future capture so that data can be reviewed. And they're going to give me an update on that as and when it's available.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good. Well done, thank you. Okay, next item, is there anything else on page 11? No, page 12, page 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17. Okay. And then the next item was matters arising in relation to the 28th of July, which we're going to deal with as part of the item 9A. So I think we note that any matters arising can be dealt with as part of that item. So we'll move swiftly on to 9A, which is the local plan call for sites. Now, as we've spoken about already, a really productive and constructive meeting. We've got a very comprehensive set of minutes and a report. Subsequent to that, as we've said, Councillor Fage has reviewed that and reconsolidated, and we've got a document in front of you, but also that was sent to members on Sunday, I think Councillor Fage said, which I think deals with some of the gives even more context to the report that was provided in the paper. So at this point, I think I'm going to pass over to Councillor Russell to further introduce, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We have had to move fairly quickly on this, and I'm very grateful that Councillor Fage pulled this report together. Both Councillor Foster and I have had a chance to have a quick input into it, but it's basically the document that he sent round on Sunday morning. I think it covers all the issues. I think it's quite right that council should decide to just go ahead with the sites that are named in this report and to absolutely refuse the other sites, because if you start to give at all, then I think that it may be that we regret it. I have to say that I did go on behalf of the town council to the meeting at Priory House when Councillor Zerny spoke about this local plan consultation. It is not a formal part of the local plan process. It's something that CBC Executive felt that they ought to offer to towns and parishes to have an initial say on all of these sites. But as I think was discussed at the meeting that I couldn't attend, there's a lot of missing information. So it's very hard to assess the sites properly. And the other thing that worries me about all this is that the planning rule is that you look at all these sites individually. And what's really needed, particularly with the local plan, is to look overall at what the impact might be, particularly on Biggleswade, with the number of sites put forward and the number of sites in neighbouring parishes which abut us. Councillor Zerny said that the overall strategy consultation this autumn, which is going to be, I understand, from November to January next year, will feed into the assessment of sites. So I think the council needs to be very careful about responses to that later consultation. He said that central beds at the moment are not quite at the 5-year supply. They've got 4.9, so they're almost there. He said that there was 17,000 houses to be built, according to what the government's requiring from them, to 2035, and another 25,000 houses between 2035 and 2050. But he also made the comment that he thought that his own opinion was that we would only need about 8% of the sites that had been put forward to meet those housing targets. And again, it's very hard to know how he's calculated that, because the number of houses proposed for each site has not been assessed yet. One assumes that people who have put land forward have got some idea of what they think they might build on it, but certainly in sites that are supposed to be mixed between residential and employment and sometimes other things, there's no indication at all about how many houses that might be. But I just repeat what Councillor Zerny said. So he was trying to be very laid back about it all, but I don't think my fellow parish councillors who were there were that laid back about it. So I just add that in. But we've got this report in front of us. I think it really should be the Town Council's response, and I'm going to propose that formally in a minute. And we've also got the list of sites that were discussed at the previous council meeting, but very firmly saying either support or against, but giving some of the concerns for each item. So I don't know whether colleagues want to discuss that, but I would like to formally suggest that this is our response, the documents that have been put in front of you this evening in printed form, and that as well as replying by whatever method central beds want, the whole thing, both the list of sites and the report that covers it, should be sent, and they should also be sent to Jenny Selly as head of planning and Caroline Danby, who is the officer in charge of the local plan. So I think we need to make sure that our views are heard at that level as well. So I'd like to formally propose, as I've just said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Members, any comments, please? Councillor Strawn?
Yes, I thought it was an excellent meeting. I thought it worked with great spirit between all sides in coming to conclusions, and thank Councillor Fage for having produced this summary in particular. I think, if I may suggest, if we could also send a copy to our MP so that he's aware of our approach, that would be helpful. The point I think that we also need to make sure is the two further conditions that in this report from Councillor Fage, particularly with regard to the access to the A1, because I think if National Highways could find a solution at the Edworth turn, that would actually relieve an incredible amount of pressure on what is now the southern roundabout, and it would take development from the land at east that's already got its planning permission. It could be done in such a way it takes it directly out onto the A1 there without having to go down that road. And so ideally, and this may not be in the call for sites per se, a dual carriageway straight through that site would, I think, make a lot of sense if it's feasible. So I think in terms of the future of the town, that will be a great relief in more ways than one.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. Members, any other comments? Councillor Russell?
Can I just respond to this issue of the A1? There's been an email today from Councillor Whitaker saying that she's spoken to Marcel Coffey and he is going to convene a meeting between Central Beds Highways officers, himself and National Highways, but also somebody from the Department for Transport, to look specifically at the A1 in Bedfordshire. I think that's a big move forward. I did myself try to push that with Robert Ling, who's the Director of Resources, a few weeks ago. And I think that's very necessary, because even if we get this relief road, I think we need improvements to the A1 South. And we've still got the 4 sites that are supposed to be making improvements. And I'm trying to find out whether I've remembered or misremembered about the fact of the A1 being aligned when it was dealt with last time, so that the A1 could be grade separated. There's may just about be enough land on the east side, but there would certainly be enough land on the west side before they build home farm. So I think, the A1 is absolutely essential. And I think you're right. And maybe we need to just emphasise that first point when we send the things back. And I'm quite happy to add Richard Fuller to the circulation list. Thank you, Councillor Strawn.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones.
So I think I have a question about all this. So first of all, to echo what everybody else has said, a massive thank you to everybody around the table and who aren't here today, and to Councillor Page and Councillor Whitaker for all their help and support. I'm fully in agreement with all the responses here. The thing that's going through my mind, and as we're talking more about improvements to the A1, I suppose the question is, for those of you who have had experience in this in the past, there's something in my mind, the argument, the tussle between the whole NIMBYism approach, which I don't believe this is because they're all refused for valid planning reasons, and we live and we know our environment and we know what it can and can't absorb. But as and when improvements are made to the A1, is that something that these would be dependent upon, I suppose, is my question. And if you can take that as a very naive junior question, I ask for your guidance, I suppose, to make sure that by us supporting those improvements, which is the right thing to do for traffic, we're not also then causing ourselves further problems later on. Does that make sense?
It does. And Councillor Russell can respond. Go ahead, Councillor Russell.
Kindly.
I think what we're saying in the report is that the 4 sites that we support can only go ahead if there are A1 improvements. We're not indicating in any way that would give a green light to everything else.
Okay.
We're saying not even the 4 sites can go ahead without improvements to the A1 or further access to the A1. And that's going to be a very expensive thing, but with possibly Tempsford being announced in the autumn, there may just be some national money as well. But I can't see exactly how the Edworth turn would work, but, I'm not a highways engineer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything, Councillor Dorner? No? Okay.
No, I was going to give a bit of history on the A1 when we almost got the new A1 motorway through Bedfordshire.
Nearly there.
You're going back to the 1990s.
I think the thing to note here, and this agenda item is a response to the call for sites, and obviously all of these bits comments are valid. The point here, as I think was mentioned in the previous meeting, in the previous local plan, there were lots of sites put forward. How many of those have actually come to fruition in the last 5-7 years? Very few. So we're talking about a longer period of time, and that's the important thing here, is looking at the sites for the long term. Our view will be communicated to Central Beds in the format that we've agreed. At some point, then all of the individual sites will be considered, and at some point will then either be approved or rejected by the Central Beds to go into the local plan for consideration, and then will or won't come forward. I think it's important that we get in early, make sure our views are known, and as has been alluded to earlier, make sure that the next time we respond, we're equally as involved, I think, and positive contribution to make sure that we're all over everything. I think one of the things when we considered it previously, we certainly didn't have a meeting in this format and look at each individual site in the way that we've done. A really, really positive thing to do, and it shows that we're serious about what the development that could come forward in the town or otherwise, and where we want the development to come. So I think it's a summary. So we've got a proposal from Councillor Russell. I haven't got a seconder yet. So we've got seconders. So all those in favour then, please, of the proposal, please show. That is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Move now on to item 9B, which is the neighbourhood plan update. So you have in front of you a report in relation to the neighbourhood plan. I think the report is fairly straightforward. there's a sort of view that perhaps whether the timing is correct on this or not, whether we need to go at this point. So I'm going to offer this up to members to make comments, and then we'll see where we go. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. I disagree entirely with the premise of the paper in front of us. The neighbourhood plan does not have to be reviewed when it's 5 years old. I'm referring to the current plan itself, and at 1.2 it says the status of the plan. It says the neighbourhood plan will be in force until the end of 2035 or until an updated plan is made before that date. And the updated plan refers to neighbourhood plan, not local plan. The only problem there could be with the local plan is if it brings in a policy which conflicts with what's in our current neighbourhood plan, then that would obviously take priority, because we can't put anything in a neighbourhood plan that conflicts with the local plan. So I think this is rather premature. We can do a review at any time that we feel a review is necessary to take account of wider changes to policy, changes to the area's economy or the environment or whatever. We could decide to review the plan. I think that with what's going on with the local plan at the moment, there are two large areas of work for the town council: responding throughout the process to the local plan and then looking at the neighbourhood plan. At the moment, the neighbourhood plan was made after the local plan was made, which means that it would actually take precedence. I think, you know, there are lots of things to consider about the timing. The local plan timetable from the CBC website, which I alluded to earlier, the next formal consultation, November, January, is the vision, aims, objectives, summary of policies and summary of evidence. The final formal consultation is not till October to December 2027. And that's when it says on the Central Beds website that we will know the proposed site allocations, which I find bizarre. I really don't think that that's the right way to go about it, but that's what's on the Central Beds website. It will be submitted, if everything goes well, in June 28. It will then have 6 months to be examined, and I assume it will be another examination in public like the last time, so the Town Council will be able to have its say. And possible adoption in December 28. So that's what's happening with the local plan. So it's quite a long drawn out process. We don't know yet what the government plans are for Tempsford Newtown. They are supposed to be announcing something September, October about whether it's definitely going to head and whether there's going to be a development corporation or what's going to happen. We'll wait and see. Another thing that I think we need to take into account is that we do have elections next May. There'll be a new council. That new council will need to bed in. We have no idea who might be elected. I don't know who's standing and who's not standing, but even if you're standing, are you going to get re-elected? We've got Restore, we've got Reform, we've got Greens, we've got Lib Dem, we've got Labour, we've got Conservative. It's getting a very crowded field, so we don't know who's going to be elected. So as I said, I think the Town Council should concentrate on the local plan until the end of 2027. I think what might be sensible is to form a working group in the autumn of 2027, because we've got to look at the composition of the working group, get people to agree to be on that working group, to start work in January 2028, at which time we will know the result of the call for sites. We need to work with CBC. When we did the neighbourhood plan before, they had a neighbourhood plan officer, and he came to an awful lot, not all, but an awful lot of our working group meetings, and that was very useful and kept us on track with the way CBC were thinking. And as I've already said, it is better for the neighbourhood plan to be made after the local plan. The working group has to be led by the Town Council. yes, we should invite participation by key community groups, as we did for the current neighbourhood plan. What we found that time was that the amount of meetings and the depth of conversation we were going into did put some people off taking part. They found it all a bit too much. So I hope we can find representatives. And that's one reason for looking at forming the group before we're ready to start work. I also think, alluding to something you said earlier, Chairman, that we should invite neighbouring parishes to be represented, because a lot of the development is going to be adjacent to our borders. You and I had a lot of meetings, Chairman, with neighbouring parishes when we were looking at the community governance review, and they indicated that they would be very happy to work with Biggleswade Town Council, particularly the smaller ones. And when we did this neighbourhood plan, we actually had a representative from Sutton Council on the working group. He was the man who was leading on the Sutton neighbourhood plan, which was actually made before ours was. So I think, you know, talking to neighbouring parishes is the right way forward. And I've also already mentioned CBC, and do they still have a neighbourhood planning office off? The government has issued its software. I'm afraid I'm a cynic, and anything that says government software rings alarm bells with me, because it never seems to work properly. I think it would be quite good to see how this is working with the other parishes before we get too excited about it. But I don't think it's going to be a substitute for professional advice. We were very lucky with the current neighbourhood plan because we had Dave Chetwin advising us, and it was actually Dave Chetwin who was one of the co-authors, in fact the main author, of the government guidance on neighbourhood plans that had been produced just before we started work on the current plan. And having his insight was really helpful. And he, of course, actually wrote the plan for us. I don't know how far this software might be able to go, but somebody has actually got to write the plan. And if you've looked at the current neighbourhood plan, there's an awful lot of context setting before you get to the actual plans that are being put forward. There's an awful lot of other policy to look at. So I do think we'll need professional planning assistance. If we don't write the plan well, then the inspector who will look at it may well reject the plan, and then we've got to go back to square one. So I'd just like to say that the previous working group had very good admin support from Helen Calvert. The minutes, the agendas, everything that needed to happen, she was very good. But we did not have any other senior officer involvement. Councillor Strawn was part of the group, and he's nodding there. A lot of the contact between Dave Chetwin and the working group was through me, when it would have been better if it had been through an officer. And so it's good that officers will be involved this time. And before, we had monthly meetings for over 3 years. It's a big commitment. This time it should be slightly easier because we're amending a plan. We will not be, I don't think, rewriting it. Just like to say that there are 2 supplementary planning guidance documents for Biggleswade. There's the neighbourhood plan, and there's also this from 2011, the Biggleswade Town Centre Adopted Strategy and Master Plan. Now, this was discussed at the joint committee. It was actually Councillor Whitaker who raised it. And the joint committee has decided to have a look at this master plan at its next meeting. And the idea is to go through it and find out what is still relevant 15 plus years later. But I just wanted to read to colleagues. The strategy proposes the rerouting of bus services which currently pass through the Market Square to include Biggleswade Station in the future. This will allow commuters easy access to the station by bus. It will also allow residents who wish to travel outside of Biggleswade easy access, avoiding the need to be dropped off by car. Then it says, in order to facilitate the enhanced bus route, it will be necessary to provide an area to accommodate waiting buses at the transport interchange, rather than around Century House, and allowing buses to pick up from stops in the town centre. There will be a number of benefits arising from the removal of bus waiting requirements in the Market Square, including improving Century House and its environ, making it available for alternative uses. It will also assist in improving pedestrian safety in the Market Square and on the High Street. When I reread that, when I picked this up the other day,
It's Groundhog Day.
and when we had a bit of a discussion about the transport interchange at the joint committee, it's not able to be implemented in the way that we were talking about in that document from 2011. I won't say any more than that, but you know, it's very frustrating. So there are still relevant things in the master plan as well as in the neighbourhood plan. I think the problem is, how successful have the neighbourhood plan and the master plan been? Are we really judging all planning applications against them? Are they being used by CBC planners? I suspect not. Are they being used by the town council? No, I don't think they really are, because it's been down to councillors to use them. And I mean, I was involved in both the master plan and the neighbourhood plan, and I'm a culprit. I've not been looking at all our planning applications, looking at the policies in these documents. So it's not worth having them if not. What we did decide to do was to reference the neighbourhood plan at the beginning of all our town council responses, but we don't refer to detailed policies. So my view that I'm evolving now is that we need a member of staff who won't only lead on our response to the local plan and the review of the neighbourhood plan, but will monitor all our planning applications against the neighbourhood plan and the master plan and make the necessary recommendations to the town council. As I said, what we get at the present, it's all down to councillors to do the work. Agendas could, in the future, give information, but with the addition of CBC specialist officer comments, so there are internal consultees in CBC to do with trees and highways and goodness knows what. It's useful to know what they're saying because it might help us with our determination. And that member of staff could also lead on the local plan consultations, the neighbourhood plan review, but also monitor all of those future planning applications. Somebody wouldn't need to be a qualified planner, but would have to have undertaken some planning training, I think. So I've got some recommendations here. The first is that the working group should be formed in autumn 27, ready to start work in January 28. That the membership of that group should include councillors, representatives of key community groups, representatives of neighbouring parishes, and a CBC planning officer. And I'd also like to suggest that we request the clerk to consider how the new planning role, which I've just outlined, might be incorporated into the current staff structure and perhaps to come forward and we can discuss it at a future meeting. So I don't know, Chairman, whether you will allow me to take that last recommendation forward, but if not, then I would ask for it to be on a future agenda so that we can discuss it. But I really think that we've got to be more professional. We've got to recognise that 2/3 of the colleagues on the council have got full-time jobs. The few of us who are retired have other responsibilities as well, and it really needs much more officer support if we're going to make it worthwhile to have an updated neighbourhood plan, and if we're going to make use of the town centre master plan, or even suggest to CBC that the things that are still outstanding from that be incorporated into the neighbourhood plan. It would have to, I mean, CBC were the officers who put this together with people from Biggleswade. So we can't just say we'll put that in the neighbourhood plan, but it might be something we want to talk to Central Beds about when we've gone through the master plan in more detail and seen what's still relevant. I'll stop, sorry.
Councillor Ross, thank you very much for that really very comprehensive update. With the matter in relation to an officer responsible for planning, and whilst it falls slightly outside the scope of this item, so whilst it's something to take away, I think what we should do is refer it to the clerk to consider, and then we perhaps make a formal proposal at another meeting. But happy to include it as a comment, but rather than it being a formal proposal. So maybe for the clerk to take away to consider how planning applications and the local plan and the neighbourhood plan are administered in future. That then doesn't tie us to anything, but it allows the clerk to consider it and then come back in future. So if you're happy with that, I've had Councillor Jones first. So Councillor Jones, then Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Russell for a very comprehensive answer there. The only thing I would just say, Councillor Russell, is when you were listing off all the different parties for the potential makeup of the council next year, you did forget the loving independents. So I did think that we should just be.
My apologies.
Sorry, at that point, thank you. No, I think so. I agree with the majority of what you said, Councillor Russell, but for slightly different reasons. I appreciate the forward planning of officers in pulling this report together, because that is way ahead of schedule, definitely, but really helpful for us to start collating our thoughts and considering our approach. So I definitely appreciate the timing of it being here. Contrary to maybe some other people sitting around the table, I'm excited to use the technology available to help support us going forwards that exists on GovAssist. Not just for the cost saving purposes, but also because I think recognising that it's a tool, it's a supporting tool like any other AI tools out there, rather than a substitute, is important and something we should be adopting as a council. But the cost saving is definitely a bonus. I don't think there's anything that should stop officers exploring that in the meantime. But if we do delay the starting, which I would be in agreement actually, and would agree to support Councillor Russell's recommendations for an autumn start of next year, I think it would be prudent potentially to not procure the software now, because things can change and they update, and it might be a little bit more cost effective as technology improves as we get towards it. Also, there's that consideration, and I had this thought as well about the new council coming in, that they might want to do something very different. So for us to make those decisions now on their behalf when we wouldn't even be utilising it feels like the wrong thing to do. I also think the timing for me, I would agree, we need to be clear on the local plan and consider those elections, but I would love to align as close as possible. So I think the officers it was only a year difference, wasn't it, between? And I think it's important we try and stick to those deadlines as quickly as possible. But again, as I said, I think if we were going to take Councillor Russell's recommendations, I would like to vote on them individually, because I think the first one on starting the working group in autumn 27, I would be thoroughly supportive of. I think the membership of who should be involved, it doesn't feel right for me to vote on who that should be now, when potentially I wouldn't even be part of the council making that decision near the time. So I'd rather defer and allow the future council to make that decision, but for us to put guidance in the notes that that's something that we would recommend from previous experience. And again, to your point, Chairman, about what you said about the planning role, I wouldn't be comfortable voting on that at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Chairman. I was quite happy and to support Councillor Russell's proposals in full, effectively. As far as the planning role was concerned, I was looking at that as being more of something that was going to be looked into, and rather than something that was going to be implemented. So it wasn't about actually creating the role or anything at this stage. It was merely the fact that we need to look as a council, and the clerk to look at whether that's suitable. And in view of the amount of work that's going to be involved with not only the call for sites, but the main local plan from CBC, the neighbourhood local plan, I think we need to obviously review and update our local Biggleswade Town Centre master plan. There is a lot of planning stuff to be dealt with, in addition to the day-to-day stuff of all the planning applications that come through. So I'm fully supportive of the principle of it being looked into, and I probably wouldn't come back until, say, the new council as confirmation, but it's time to look into it. As far as the point on technology is concerned, yes, it makes sense to use technology, but once it's been proven, and what might be helpful is if we know other local authorities that are actually using that software, that we make a point of asking those authorities and even going and viewing it and seeing how it works in practice. Local authorities are generally very good at working together in that case. So I wouldn't want to be the trendsetter in it, but it's certainly something to take on board at the right time and at the right price. As to the makeup of the working group, again, I think it's premature principally because we don't know whether any of us will be here next May after the election. So I think it'd be wrong to try and set up a working group now, which could have 100% change at come May next year. So I think that is appropriate. So that should wait there. But we have got the membership again. If we set out the principles of membership as expounded by Councillor Russell, then the new council, the new working group would actually set those parameters at the appropriate time. So I'm basically support everything Councillor Russell said in principle, understanding Councillor Jones' caveats to it, but I don't think we were setting actually anything in tablets in stone, apart from the fact that it's premature to actually move ahead at this moment, other than to plan for it for the new council, so that the new council gets a steer when it comes into being.
Okay, Councillor Strachan, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, considering we're setting the plans for Biggleswade for the next 25, 30 years, I think a person on the council who works for the council has got some knowledge and can be trained up to do a job, which is what some of the council are doing in their spare time, is worthwhile, and we should look into it. Mm-hmm. The other thing that Councillor Russell mentioned was the going back to the previous plans and saying this previous plan and this point is why we're suggesting this thing is a key element, because I remember going to the training and the guy there said you need to feed back from the plans into your answers to these questions, not just say it's a good idea, say and this is why, and feed it back as evidence. The classic one was the train station, the bus station, and the town centre buses. We had it in the plans many years ago, and it's kind of been pushed back all the time. But we've got the actual evidence and the plan to actually make some headway with that, I think, even if CBC say they're not interested.
Okay.
So
thank you.
We need to learn that one. Thank
you, Councillor Thomas. So what I'm hearing is that the word principle, so the principle of, so setting the working group around autumn 27 is supported, and with a view to setting up the working group in 2028. I think I'm sensing that that's really what people are supportive of the principle of inviting members of local organisations and local councils, parish councils. So the principle of that, and again the principle of reviewing the software, but not purchasing that at this stage. So again, Councillor Russ, I think if there's support for your proposal, motion, recommendations with minor changes, I think.
Well, if I might say so, I didn't suggest that any of this goes ahead immediately.
No.
I'm certainly not suggesting, as the report said, that we appoint people tonight or anything like that. All I've said as a recommendation is that the working group should be formed in autumn 27, which is new council, but then to include those representatives, which we had before and was very helpful. And then the third recommendation was to request the clerk to consider how a new planning role might work. So it's not making any suggestion that we're going to implement any of it immediately. So what I think I gathered from colleagues is that there's broad support for what I'm saying, because I'm just saying autumn 27 for January 28. And at the time when you set the committee up in the autumn, it's councillors, community groups, neighbouring parishes, perhaps a CBC planning officer. That's all I'm saying.
So I think you're right. I think we've got there with some good input. So so we have a proposal. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? So Councillor Strachan, Councillor Thomas. So all those in favour then please show. Okay, Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. So that is carried. So we will move on to item, we're in 9C, which is the parliamentary inquiry into revitalising high streets. So
Sorry, Chair, I need, apologies, but I need to leave colleagues and clerk.
Okay,
Apologies, yeah.
thank you, Councillor Patel. So, Councillor Russell, we haven't heard of you for a while, so. Absolutely.
I've looked at the terms of reference and I think that they're exactly right, and I don't see any point in actually making any sort of formal response to it. I think they're right, because the things that happened in the high street the last few years that we haven't been happy about have all been down to government policy on Main and I. And what I just wanted to remind everybody of is that we had in 2018 the Grimsby review. And some colleagues around the table will remember that Bill Grimsby came to Biggleswade. We had a day with him in Biggleswade and he made some recommendations about what we may or may not do with the town. And then Grimsby wrote an update, COVID-19 government, to look at what we might do with our high streets after the COVID problems. So we've got that, a lot of which is still valid. I mean, basically, the Grimsby review said it can't just be retail anymore in the town centre. It has to be community services and social discourse, i.e. cafes, restaurants, and all of that, which is very much what we managed to encourage in Biggleswade. I think we've done pretty well with that. And as I say then, the government policy comes along with its various taxes and all the rest of it. And that's what the parliamentary inquiry is going to be addressing. So I simply say that we note it and don't need to respond to it. But keeping in mind when we go forward with all our various other planning that there's still some stuff in there that should be useful. And I think one of the things that this council did take away from Bill Grimsby was the fact that you have to know what you want to do in the town centre, but when pots of money come along, whether it's government pots of money or whether it's Section 106, and certainly officers have done that over the last few years. So I think, you know, a bit of a pat on the back for the Biggleswade Town Council, but there's still work to do.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Russell. Anyone else wishing to comment? Councillor Strong?
Just an observation, I agree with the approach, but we have got a business forum, I think, taking place at the end of October. And I just wonder whether this might be something that would be mentioned on the agenda with the local businesses, because after all, hopefully there'll be businesses from the town centre. And I think it's important that we listen to them, even though we may not be making any formal approaches at this stage. But it's certainly something that they need to be aware of, and something that I think is we should be discussing with them in the appropriate forum.
Thank you. I think that's right, and I entirely agree with the approach. Some of these items we considered at the previous TCM as well. Some of the items in relation to the street fronts and the street furniture and that sort of thing. So we're not behind the curve at all. So completely agree with the approach that there's no requirement for a submission other than to say we agree, which really doesn't seem to be a great deal of point. So so is the proposal of Councillor Russell to make no so second to Councillor Strawn. So all those in favour then, please. Okay, that's unanimous, carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 9D, which is the CBC Parish and Town Council Road Safety Partnership. So you'll have read in the paper. This is I will introduce this because it's an area that I think needs some consideration from members in some way. I have to say, given the responses that we've had from the executive member for highways in relation to Kitelands, and I've seen the response that we received, to then have a a CBC Parish and Town Council Road Safety Partnership, which basically is saying to parish councils and town councils that if you want something done that's as a safety issue in your town, you need to come up with the idea, agree to fund it, and then we'll then come up with the costs for you, and then we'll agree to implement it. My view on this is that whichever officer was tasked with putting that together, for me, there are other things that I think should have been priorities. I appreciate that in some other town councils and parish councils, they may find this particular paper and this approach useful. Personally, for Biggleswade Town Council, I think that if there is a safety issue that the town council has identified, it is for me incumbent on the highways Department of Central Beds to take responsibility for that, to cost it, and then come back to us and say, look, this is what it would cost. Not to say, town council, you want it, you pay for it. It's to build it into their highways budget and then prioritise it. And they assess the priorities. It's not incumbent on the town council to assess whether there is a safety issue that needs to be fixed, and then Central Beds Highways saying, well, it's up to you if you want to pay for it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. For me, that's completely inappropriate. And I think for some councils, that may be the way forward. There will be areas where we are very concerned about safety for our children. There are roads in the town that maybe are an issue. It shouldn't be on our responsibility to make those safe, and to then go through the process and then pay for it as well. So that's I try not to put views across from the chair, but that's my position on this one. Over to any other members. So I'm going to go Councillor Jones, then Councillor Thomas.
So I think this perplexes me, right? So I think if this had come at the point where we were pulling together precept recommendations and understanding where pockets of money fit where, to understand that there would be potentially more money coming in to pay for this to us as a council, it would be more helpful. But to land in the middle of a financial year with no... Am I misunderstanding the point here? But I don't understand how they expect us to pick up the cost for something that's not technically under our control.
Can I come back to you?
Please.
So the point, I think the timing is done specifically for that reason. So it then does allow us to consider the item. If our budget setting is October, November, December, and we consider the budget in January, that gives us an opportunity. Assuming that we've put in an application, Central Beds agree to the costings, we can then build it into our budget for 2027-28.
But that's for next year.
Yeah. So,
but this application is for this year.
It is but this application is for this year to prepare.
To be processed.
Correct. Okay. Is my understanding. Is that? I think I'm right in saying so. On the basis of that, it's not necessarily for this year, and if it were, we've not budgeted for it. So if it were for something they're budgeted for 2027-28, it might be more appropriate. But even then, I'll stand by my comments. I don't agree with it, but carry on.
But then for me to come back on that, if I may, I would have appreciated more a conversation to be consulted as a council as to the approach that they would want to take with this before this just landed on us. And I think if there's a way for us to respond to CBC separately from the activity that they've requested here, to actually formally notarise that this is not really something that's welcomed, if that's what members decided around the table, I'd appreciate that in addition, to however we're going to respond to this. But it definitely perplexes me.
I can't remember. Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think Colin, Councillor Thomas, and then Councillor Russell.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Jones was saying is a bit moot because the applications had to be put in between July the 1st and July 31st, so we missed it. June there's actually 2 months. And also they've extended it to September 30th this year as a special favour, which doesn't help either. My point would be that simply that we're not responsible for highways and neither are we responsible for schools. So if we want something outside of school, that's not us. If they're willing to give us a chunk of the money next year or next week, we can get on with it. But this doesn't fall under our responsibility, and we've been told this many times. We ask for something and say, well, you're not highways, you don't have any responsibility, you don't have any say. Fair enough. But they get the money from the precept, not us. And they are a county council and they should get on with it. And if we see something that's seriously bad and we flag it up and they don't do anything about it, I don't want to say this, but I don't want there to be an accident that could have been prevented.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Strawn? Oh, was it Councillor Russell, sorry.
I think it's outrageous, actually, that they've even proposed this. And I know that some other parish councils think it's outrageous as well. But also they're limiting the kind of things that you're supposed to look at. So there are lots of issues there. Some of what's being proposed doesn't really have an effect. I know lots of villages like to have these flashing things at the entrances and all the rest of it. But I know from my relationship with Old Warden, it doesn't do any good at all, and people are all still complaining about speeding and all the rest of it. So, you know, they're limiting it to that. They're expecting us to know, and we're not highways engineers, and they have the gall to, every time we ask for something for safety reasons, to say, go away. I mean, particularly with Biggleswade Academy. But what about my famous island in St Andrew Street, which incidentally is in the master plan?
Were you a member of that?
Yes,
Uh-huh,
but I didn't necessarily put it in there. But, you know,
Sure.
we ask for things which we know are needed for safety in the town, and we just get slapped down. And this is just a way of passing budgetary responsibility to the town council. And that's exactly what was being talked about when we talked about the parish charter at the meeting at Priory House. The same meeting when Adam Zerny talked about the local plan, Robert Ling talked about the parish charter. And the mood in the room was, you're just trying to pass stuff on to us for our precept because you're not going to do it. And that's exactly what this is. So I think we just ignore it.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Jones and then Councillor Strawn after that.
I fully appreciate the frustration that all the members do, but I think the problem with ignoring it is it can escalate. So I'd like to propose that we write to CBC to register our displeasure at this for all the reasons mentioned around the table. Even if it's ignored, that we've done the right thing. But sitting here and saying it here is one thing, but to actually take action and say, this is how we're feeling about it, at least then our voice is being heard.
Okay, so
Propose that.
so there is a proposal then that we write to Central Beds to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to forward an application in relation to safety. We feel that it is your responsibility to deal with safety matters, and we feel it's at best inappropriate that you are considering providing us an opportunity to do that, and we would register displeasure that you even thought it was a good idea. What's that effect?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Is that a good enough summary? Okay, Councillor Strawn, did you want to comment?
Yes, well, I think I'm disgruntled of Biggleswade at the
Okay,
moment.
so is this going to be an additional to everybody else? Is it the same?
No, I agree with the comments made. This is Central Beds Council getting out of its statutory duties and obligations and trying to pass the buck to others. They say we can refer to Fix My Streets. We will continue to refer matters that need to be dealt with, and they've ignored every other request, such as islands, etc. in the past. They've told us we don't know anything about highways by implication. So what's the point of actually engaging and spending our money because they don't want to?
Okay, so we've got a proposal. Seconded. All those in favour of that approach then, please. So we're writing to Central Beds is the approach. Those against, and then abstentions. Because that is carried.
If I might just say I've abstained because I think that what was being said isn't strong enough. And I'd also like to point out that we've got a meeting in a couple of weeks' time about the local transport plan, and we could put some input into that as well.
Okay. Well, we'll put something together and see where we lead to then, shall we? Right, okay. So that was carried. We'll move on to item 9E, which is the Angling Water treatment of waterways, sewage inspections and discharge into...
Sorry, there was just a point on that document that we didn't do, that the recommendation that we note the clerk's ongoing correspondence with CBC. Did we formally note that? Do we need to? And is there any support that we need to provide?
If you want to include that in the recommendation, does that have support from members to note that as well?
Yeah.
In relation to previous report? Okay, so that's, so yes. There you go, there was nods. Okay, we'll move on to 9E then. This is the Anglian Water and Mr. Hussaini.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So in the last 4 weeks or so, officers have received quite a lot of correspondence and good information from a person who lives near Biggleswade. It relates to the water treatment facility in town, the level and degree of inspections of water quality and volumes discharged into the Ivel via the facility, and essentially it also has called for officers to have kind of go and visit the actual water treatment facility, which was done recently. Some photos were taken of the condition, essentially, of the general landscaping around that site, and officers noted that it's extremely overgrown. I mean, to a huge degree. So it's going to be a large job to actually do that. And that's on third-party land anyway. The bit that obviously doesn't go into the river, but the river's edge, the bank. So anyway, officers have written through to Anglian Water and the Environment Agency using the correct contacts as well, which was supplied by members. So thanks to them. We've received responses so far which have acknowledged the inquiry that relates to all of the matters raised. And we've been told essentially that the local team for Anglian Water is looking into this. This was about 6 days ago or so. Haven't heard anything back from them yet. And the Environment Agency, same goes for them. So they've kind of acknowledged receipts and that's it so far. That's where we're at.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone wish to comment? Councillor Strawn and Councillor Russell?
Has it actually been established whether there is any sewage waste, etc., leaking into the Ivel and contaminating the Ivel? And is it actually within the parish of Biggleswade that it's actually leaking in, or is it a bit further north? In which case, I think it will be leaving Biggleswade by the natural flow of the water.
I think I'm going to pass that back to Mr. Hussaini to answer the question, if you're able to.
So, not necessarily. So the single visit, no, there was nothing that could be discerned at the time. But again, it's obviously fluctuating piece, isn't it?
Okay, so we'll leave it there. Councillor Russell.
There is discharge sometimes, and it's on the common, so it's still within Biggleswade. I think we've addressed this in what we've just agreed to go to Central Beds about the local plan. Anglian Water are now objecting to planning applications because they know they haven't got the capacity. They can object, but they can't stop a planning application. But they're making it quite clear that they do need to make improvements to that plant. I'm not sure how much more pressure we can put on Anglian Water, but see if you get a response and see what happens.
So I think we had an update. I think we'll just make sure that this is on our agenda. It will come up as a matter arising in the next meeting anyway, but I think we just make sure that it's continuing on the agenda. I gather you'll be receiving feedback on a regular basis anyway to make sure that the town council is aware of what's happening and then is passing on the individual comments to the organisations responsible. I think that's the right approach. Okay, so in which case we'll move on to item 9F, which is the proposed temporary road closure. It's item for consideration. This is the road closure on the bridge near just outside Biggleswade on the way out to Potton. Any comments? This note. Oh, Councillor Russell.
Just a general comment that we might be able to address at some other time. But the people who do these road repairs and that, they put their signage so far back about road closed that it's...
Not sure where it is.
Well, it causes confusion, and I can see confusion here.
Yep.
Because if they start to put road closed down at the Sun Street roundabout, you know, that's going to put an awful lot of people off. And in fact, my husband had a situation yesterday where he wanted to go to Cock and Hatley. He went to go through Wrestlingworth and there was a road closed sign. So he came back round to Potton to go up the hill to Cock and Hatley, and there was a road closed sign there. Well, they're the only two entrances into Cock and Hatley. So how was anybody supposed to get in? I mean, he had to phone the people he was supposed to be meeting and say, oi, you know, where can I get in? So it's this sort of thing that they put the signage so far back now, and we get these notifications, but it can be very confusing for people who don't know the area well.
So I think what you're saying is that the road closure signs need to be specific enough so that people who haven't seen the road closure notice can still work out actually what's happening. And I think that's the problem without it. And the same thing would happen with Hitchin Street and around, because you don't know which part is closed. But so we can perhaps somehow form a response in relation to that. But it's a general response, making sure that the signage is more specific than it currently is. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, to back Councillor Russell up, I've had the same sort of problem, but I've realised that when it says ahead, it doesn't mean soon. It means somewhere in the next 10 miles.
Right.
Yes. So I went round and round the Black Cat once. Anyway, I won't say why, but it just ahead means it's somewhere in the future. And when it says road closed, no other words, that is shut.
So perhaps there's
but when you get there, it's too late.
So it needs to be more clear. Is our approach, so that residents don't have to work out when they read to say, oh, it's shut at this point, or it's going to be shut 3 miles down the road. Okay, shall we leave it there? Yeah. Okay. Next item then is the item 10, planning applications. We have one, which is 6 Ouse Way, garage conversion and single story rear extension. Any comments? Subject to neighbours. So we're okay, happy with that. In which case, planning application outcomes, we've got nothing there to consider. So we'll move on to 12A, financial administration and the accounts. The papers, so you've seen the details on the line. Any comments, please? You've got obviously the papers attached as well. Anybody wish to comment?
I just think note the report.
So no report, happy with that? Yeah, nods of approval. Okay, let's go ahead with that. And then 13A is a report about bank reconciliation. This is the members to note report from the head of finance. This is in relation to the I think Councillor Thomas, you've reviewed the details. So I think for me it's a note the report. Happy with that? Yep. So next item then is the 13B Wayleave at Saxon Drive. You've seen the information there. Any comments, please? Councillor Strawn?
Yes, we as a council have a lease over this piece of land.
Yep.
It is going to interfere with our lease. We should be seeking recompense for the loss of the use of that piece of land and the inconvenience caused. I appreciate it may only be the freeholder who can actually grant it, but we have rights over that piece of land because of the lease. Therefore, we should be seeking recompense, and depending on the length of the lease would depend upon the amount of recompense that comes along. I'm not qualified to say how much that should be, but a surveyor would be. But certainly, I think we should be getting something because it's interfering with the rights that we've got. Forgive me, how long is our lease over that piece of land? Do we know from the top of the head? No.
But I think we can take. I think one of the things that we might consider is maybe not directly recompense, but maybe something that could be considered at some form of either grant or something that could come forward to the town council for specific usage. Can't be section 106, obviously, but it could be something that a contribution could be made. Councillor Russell, go ahead.
Perhaps they'd like to give us something to add to our grants that we normally give, so that we've got extra money to give to our community.
Well, let's see. So have you got anything to add to that? Go ahead, Councillor, Mr. Hosseini.
Thanks. So not to obviously go anything contrary, but in terms of facts, we've got a situation where we are the leaseholders, but in the lease, we don't have direct rights over wayleaves or recompense over those, despite the fact that, of course, it's probably going to cause some disruption over time. what happens is the freeholder has those rights. They've confirmed that to us as well in discussion, in email format. And they've embarked on their own kind of way of, doing this in the correct way. In terms of recompense, CBC have reached out to the developer and have said essentially that all legal costs will need to be covered by the developer, and have left it at that. I'm not aware of any extra demands that they've put on the developer. One other thing, though, in email format, again, separately with the developer, copying in again CBC, though, obviously, officers have gone through to the developer and have asked whether they have some kind of community fund or other kind of vehicle. They've responded, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago, saying that they're a small family business, do not have any community fund, and look forward to engaging, collaborating with both councils to a good effect, and the development should be a good thing. Has been so far their response.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Strawn.
If I may come back, Whaleys have historically had a compensation in some form or other paid there, not just on legal costs, because it's enabling benefit to the people using the benefit of that way leave. I would ask that the council actually seek advice on whether there is a value to that and what that might be in some form or other. I think it's a principle. We are the leaseholder. We have got rights over it. The way leave is something that's additional and a right being given to a third party. It's not us getting the right. We're actually effectively being affected by the freeholder and the beneficiary of that way leave. So I'd ask that officers actually look into this in a bit more and report back as to whether or not there is any recompense in some form or other. And I'm not specifically worried about great amounts, but as a principle, I think that we as a council should be getting something for that.
Is that a proposal? Seconded by anybody? Councillor Russell? Okay, so I think we've got a steer. If we can see what we can do and see what options are. I appreciate we've had some communication, but let's take it further, see what more we can do. So all those in favour then, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Next item then is the 13C, which the Police and Crime Commissioner Annual Report. It's a good report. It's really detailed, I found.
I do have to make an apology. We didn't include the report in the papers. It wasn't in visible ink, I promise. So I will make sure that it's on the next agenda for members to view.
Thank you. So we'll move on to then 13C D, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner survey. I would say that the survey is available via hyperlink. Those members that wish to actively participate in that are more than welcome to do so. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, I noticed the survey, but it refers to residents. Does that include shopkeepers and the like who are affected by crime in the town and antisocial behaviour? Because I am concerned at what is with the summer nights that there are some undesirable things going on in the town, in and around the town centre. In the evenings where there is no sign of any police or anything else. And there's also apparently quite a bit of shoplifting going on, although whether anybody actually bothers reporting it because the police don't do anything, I'm uncertain of. But I think this is businesses as much as residents should be having the opportunity to make the comments, and perhaps that could be highlighted to local businesses with whom we're in contact with.
Well, I think you're right, Councillor Strawn. I think perhaps an action for us is to make sure that the link is put on our website so that residents and businesses have an opportunity. It's highlighted. It goes on Facebook, goes onto the website, and as a service, so that we're giving the opportunity for people to.
Your proposal.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody happy with that? It sounds like there's nods, so we'll do that.
Just as an update, I think we have already shared it, but we can certainly do that again.
Well, obviously we haven't seen it, so that's probably a bad thing. We haven't noticed that. So I think we'll need to review our interaction on social media a little bit more, don't we? So, okay, we'll move on to then item 14, public open session. So we have no members of the public present. So here we go. Right. I can't find a bit of paper now. It's a shame, isn't it? So members of the town council are asked to vote to enter an exempt session due to the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. This will include matters relating to the financial affairs of the authority and or ongoing negotiations. If members resolve to proceed into the exempt session, members of the public and press will be excluded from the meeting under section 1(2) of the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960, and the live streaming of the meeting will be terminated. The exempt items of discussion are minutes to Town Council, car parking, telecoms lease and Central Beds Loop and Bus Stop feasibility study as detailed on the agenda. Are all members happy to go into that session, please? Thank you. We will go into that session.